Hi, my name is CJ, and I'm going to be talking about the new Star Wars trailer. If the video looks like it jumps a little bit, don't worry. I'm going to be pausing it so that I can watch the trailer in parts and give my viewpoints on it more detailed. First off, I just wanted to say it's really weird how the trailer was released. That it was released online is weird enough. Not very many movies have their initial trailer released online, and when they do, it's typically in a situation where either it's like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where the first trailer was posted online because Kevin Smith wanted a red band trailer, but the studio didn't want to do a red band trailer because red band trailers are difficult to do and it's difficult to get to the target audience with a red band trailer. So Kevin Smith just put the first two trailers online, but when he did that, he put it on his film's website, moviepoopshoot.com. In this case, not only is it just a regular trailer that they could have done in theaters originally, or, in theaters and online simultaneously, they put it straight online, and they didn't post it on, any of their actual websites. They didn't post it, originally, at least they didn't post it on Lucasfilms or Star Wars or even Disney. It wasn't even originally released through like J.J. Abrams' Twitter or anything like that. It was just a random website, and now, it's up on YouTube, but instead of being up on Disney's YouTube channel, it's on Movie Clips Trailers, which, is just a really weird marketing way to do it. Doesn't make much sense to me. And honestly, when I first saw it, I wasn't entirely sure if it was the real trailer or not, simply because of how they distributed it. It just was really weird. I mean, it is a Star Wars movie. It has a lot of nerd fans. So doing it online, plus online is, everybody's online now. So to do it online makes sense, but, it would make more sense for them to at least put it up on their websites rather than just random websites and a random YouTube channel. Okay. For the trailer itself, we start off on presumably Tatooine. Could be any of a number of desert planets, but presumably it's going to be Tatooine because that's the biggest desert planet. And first thing we see is a black stormtrooper, and a lot of people have had problems with it, and the actors have come back. The actor who plays the stormtrooper came back saying, get used to it, basically, was his comment on it. And one of the co-stars of it basically just said, look, if you've got a problem with it, you're just showing that you're racist. But the thing is, it's not racist, it's just an honest question. Why the hell is there a black stormtrooper? It makes no sense for multiple reasons, because first off, the Empire itself is speciesist and racist, so why would they have a black stormtrooper in the first place? Like, it doesn't make much sense. You could get away with saying, well, they're more anti-alien than anti-anything else, so despite the fact he's black, he's still human, he's in, yay. That makes sense. And you can also say, hey, this is after, the fall of, the original Empire and the fall of the Emperor himself, so maybe they're a little bit more open now. That makes sense too, but it still brings up the question, why would a black man want to be a stormtrooper? Now, they could, make it where, he's working undercover kind of a thing for the rebels, and, that's the whole storyline. That's why there's a black stormtrooper, because he's not actually a stormtrooper. In that case, it would make sense. But if it is just straightforward, he's a black stormtrooper, that really doesn't make sense. It's really confusing. It's not really racist to say that. That would be, about as racist as saying, why is, a Jewish actor playing a Nazi in a World War II film? Like, that just wouldn't make sense. Why have him play that part? Okay. Next we see a new type of astromech, which basically amounts to an R2 unit's head on top of a soccer ball rolling around. Now, this idea was originally pitched during episode 4, and Lucas said no to it because it doesn't make much sense. Even if you have the astromech where he's gyroscopically stable and, he can roll in any direction, it's cool, yay, it still doesn't make that much sense why you would have it be on a soccer ball like that, basically. And it really doesn't look good. It looks like you basically just took R2-D2's head and put it on top of a soccer ball. And that was the big reason why Lucas said no to that. And also, it makes more sense to have them actually capable of flight because that gives them more movement, which is why we saw, the medical orb in episode 4, and then in episode 5 on Hoth, we saw the Empire's scout droids, and they had the same, a bit of the same design, the same general astromech CPU design. And that just made more sense to Lucas. And honestly, it looks a lot better than having an astromech head sitting on top of a soccer ball. It just doesn't look all that good. Alright, next up, we see the stormtroopers in the ship. That's fine, whatnot. I have nothing to say about that. Stormtroopers in a ship. Then we see the person getting onto the speeder and riding off. The speeder design itself is really weird as far as a one-man speeder bike goes. It's got a huge engine, almost, a pod racer-esque engine on the front of it, which, just seems really weird to me because speeders are designed to be small and fast so that they can get around very quickly. To have this big bulky engine, I would just think that would offset the balance. Yeah, you could have thrusters to keep it more stabilized, but that would just complicate it. Now JJ could have been going with, it's, a homemade speeder, and, the person riding it made it themselves, and that's why it looks different, because it's homemade, and it's actually, crazy better than any other speeder out there. That could be it. I don't know at this point, but just seeing the trailer, the little clip of it in the trailer makes me curious about it, and not sure how well a speeder like that would necessarily work. Next, we see the X-Wings flying over the water, which, again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense. X-Wings are deep space crafts. They're not terrestrial crafts. If you wanted a terrestrial craft, you wouldn't really go with the X-Wing. It's too difficult to control in situations like that. Yes, it is capable of, terrestrial flight and everything. You could use it for that, but you generally don't. Generally, you use it for, in space and in deep space. We did see what they were capable of on basically a planetoid in episode 4 when they were attacking the Death Star. And yes, they are capable of flying on planets, but the X-Wings themselves look to be in pristine condition. The person inside was well uniformed, all nice and shiny, polished uniform, brand new. So it makes you think that, it's an actual army formation, not just, some rebels came together and had whatever they had. It looks more like an actual legitimate army, which makes me question, why would an actual army be using X-Wings on a planet? Because they're not going to handle half as well as they should when they're on a planet. And if it's an army, they should have access to more than just one type of vehicle. I mean, even the rebel army, which wasn't even a real army, it was just a ragtag group, had the snow speeders for the planetary invasion while they were on Hoth. They weren't flying around in X-Wings trying to, blow up AT-ATs. So, this army looks to be more polished. Presumably, I would think that they would have more money. Why would they be using X-Wings terrestrially? Next up is the big thing that everybody's been talking about, the Sith lightsaber. First off, it's not necessarily a Sith. More than likely, it's going to be an Inquisitor, which is something new that's been introduced. Not necessarily Sith, but certainly not Jedi. They're, something different. They do lean towards the dark side. You could call them Sith, I suppose, but Sith themselves, at least in the old Legacy universe, were actually descendant from the Sith people, if not genetically, then at least culturally, and that's why they are called the Sith. The Inquisitor are different than that, but, like I said, that has more to do with the Legacy universe, which is now no longer canon. It's important to note, though, that that is an Inquisitor, not a Sith, because Inquisitors, like I said, they are different from Sith, and the first Inquisitor that we've seen so far has been on Star Wars Rebels, the new TV show, and he has a really badass lightsaber. It's a dual lightsaber, detachable, retachable, it's dual-sided, and then on top of it, it has basically a lightsaber circle type thing that goes around his hands, and he can basically turn it into a buzzsaw where the blades will start spinning around, and he can, throw it that way and everything. And it's just all around a very interesting lightsaber, very badass lightsaber. And like I said, that's important to note here because this isn't a Sith. More likely than not, at least it's not going to be a Sith. It's going to be an Inquisitor, which means that they'll have a more interesting lightsaber than just the standard single blade. And yes, there are more interesting lightsabers than just a standard single blade. Even in the movies and in the old Legacy universe, there were a lot more than just that. There were bow lightsabers. There were, the double-sided lightsabers. There were basically lightsaber dirks. There were even a couple of Jedis who modified the lightsaber's electromagnetic outpulse in order to basically turn their lightsaber into a lightsaber whip. There's also, double-headed lightsabers. But the thing is, with all of that, it requires a power source. Each blade requires its own power crystal in order to power it up. That's because of the design of lightsabers in general and how lightsabers actually function. Which means that with this new Inquisitor, I'm going to assume it's an Inquisitor because it has a nifty little lightsaber. With the Inquisitor's new lightsaber, you have the three prongs. You have the main shaft, and then you have basically two mini lightsabers coming out the side as a crossguard, as a guard, and that means that you'd have to either have one large power crystal and then two smaller power crystals to power up the two side ones, or the one power crystal is being diverted three ways, which weakens it slightly. Either way, having an actual hilt on the lightsaber is pointless. Not only is it, weird aesthetically, but it's completely pointless. A lot of people have said, oh, well, this Inquisitor probably looked at, lightsaber battles of the past and decided to protect his hands by having the lightsaber hilt right there. First off, to be able to wield that would be really freaking difficult. Just to be able to use that at all would be difficult. Now, Inquisitors, again, very badass. They can use double-sided lightsabers. There aren't very many species out there that can use double-sided lightsabers anyways. So, I'm going to go ahead and give the benefit of the doubt to the Inquisitor. He can wield this lightsaber with the hilt. But it still doesn't really help him. The hilts like that are made for broadswords. And it's not to just like protect your hands from any sword that comes down. It's to protect your hands when two swords clash. They clash on broadswords, long swords, basically, Western swords. They clash and the blades can come down like that. So to protect your fingers, to protect your hand, you have the guard right there. So that way, if it does come down, you're safe. Lightsabers aren't based off of that. Lightsabers are based off of katanas. Actually, again, going to the Legacy universe, they evolved directly from katanas because the old Jedi, 20,000 years before the Republic, actually did use full-on katanas. And then the Dark Empire came in and they basically used the Force to power things. They used the dark side of the Force. And they used that to power up lightsabers. So lightsabers weren't lightsabers. They were called something different. I can't remember offhand. But they used the dark side of the Force just to power them. And then eventually they evolved into what we know now as lightsabers. But the point being, based off of katanas. Katanas don't have the cross hilt because there's no need for it, because when they clash, they don't really slide that much. It's more quick movements. So it clashes, you move your blade away, clashes, you move your blade away, which is what we see in lightsaber battles already. On top of that, you can't really have two lightsabers meet and then slide down very easily, because the power sources from each lightsaber actually meets up and creates basically pulses within it, positive and negative pulses, that basically stabilize it and make it hold where it is. If you've ever seen Spaceballs, think of that scene where, the Schwartzes get entangled, That's basically what happens with lightsabers as well, where you can't really move them up and down because you're moving energy and through an electric magnetic field, which does not work very well, so you have to pull back. So having a cross hilt doesn't really help anyways. And then people, were saying, oh, but, it could have saved Anakin and Luke and Grievous from, losing limbs. Anakin's limb was lost right about here. So unless his cross hilt went out literally to his arm, it wouldn't have done shit. Grievous, and on top of that, Anakin lost his arm because he was too consumed by the dark side. He was focusing on his anger towards the death of his mother, anger towards Count Dooku trying to fight against the Jedi, anger against basically just everything. And he wasn't focused. Obi-Wan even said that he wasn't focused before he went into the battle. Obi-Wan told him not to go into the battle against Dooku because he wasn't focused. But he still went in. That's why he lost his arm, not because he didn't have a cross hilt. General Grievous was originally supposed to be a huge badass, and then when the movie came out, he kind of turned into a bit of a pussy. And since then, he's been delegated to basically a pussy, but a pussy who can command troops. And that's why he remained by Sidious and Dooku's side for so long, was because he was a great general. He just wasn't a very good fighter. At least not as a robot. If we go back to his earlier history when he actually had his body, he was a great fighter, but he lost a lot of his body in a fight. Had to have it replaced by cybernetics, and since then he hasn't been very good at fighting. That's also why in episode 3 you hear him wheezing a lot, because he doesn't have lungs anymore. He has cybernetic implants that function as lungs, which make it more difficult for him to breathe, and all the other cybernetic replacements make it more difficult for him to move around, more difficult to fight. So he can't fight as well as he was able to when he was, an actual living being completely. And then on top of that, he doesn't have a connection to the Force. His midichlorian count, not very high. He's not a Jedi. He's not a Sith. He's not anything like that. He's not Force intuitive. So he goes up against not just one, but two Jedis. And not just two Jedis, but Obi-Wan Kenobi, who at this time is on the Jedi Council. He is one of the strongest Jedis there is at this point. And Anakin Skywalker, who is the chosen one, who was conceived immaculately, and is basically just pure fucking metachlorians. His metachlorian count is so high that they can't even calculate it. It was at, I think they said either 30 or 80,000 plus metachlorians per cell. To put that into perspective, Yoda has, it's either 10 or 20,000 throughout his entire body. And that's fucking Yoda, who is known as basically the greatest Force user Jedi of all time. He doesn't have as much throughout his entire body as Anakin does in a single cell. Okay? Grievous is going up against these two guys. He doesn't stand a chance. He pops out, 6 arms, has 6 lightsabers. Of course the Jedis are going to be like, hey, we gotta get rid of some of these lightsabers, because even if he's not very proficient with them, he can still potentially do damage. So of course they cut off his arms. And when they do that, again, they don't cut off his hands, they cut off his arms. Okay? And then we jump ahead. So, Crosshill, again, wouldn't have helped him at all in the slightest. Jump ahead to Luke Skywalker. Luke fights Vader in Cloud City. Alright. He gets his hand cut off. In this case, he actually did get his hand cut off. The reason for this, again, Crosshill wouldn't have helped very much. It could have potentially saved him because, Vader's lightsaber comes down, Crosshill's there, stops Vader's lightsaber potentially, and Luke's hand is saved. But Luke wouldn't have been able to wield a lightsaber with a Crosshill at this point. When he went off to go fight Vader in order to save his friends, Yoda even said, "Don't do it. You're not ready." At this point in time, Luke was at the point of a Jedi Padawan, or an apprentice. At best, he was, at the point where he was ready to take the Jedi Knight test. But, the old Jedi ways were gone. So, there's no way to specifically rank him. But as far as prowess, abilities, powers, and everything, that's about the level he is. Apprentice going on Knight. And he took on Vader, who, again, is Anakin Skywalker, who, again, was created by Immaculate Conception via the Force, and who has more metachlorians than any other thing in existence. Alright. There was no chance that he was going to win the fight, and he wasn't ready, and when he went in there angry, and ready to just kill Vader. And he just didn't have the ability to do it, and he wasn't focusing, and that's why he lost the hand. Had he have had a crosshill, it would have turned out much worse for him, because at best, he would have singed himself a couple of times. At worst, he would have ended up taking the crosshill and swiping it right through his chest and killing himself. The whole idea of a crosshill, not a good one. And like I said, the purpose that it's supposed to serve as a crosshill is to protect against the blades meeting and sliding. Doesn't work that way with lightsabers anyways. Okay. Next, we see the Millennium Falcon doing all these crazy flips and everything, and TIE fighters coming after him on a desert planet, again, presuming that it's Tatooine. Alright. Now, the Millennium Falcon can do this. The Millennium Falcon is capable of it, but it would be really difficult for that to be done. Han flying it, quite possibly it could be done. The TIE fighters being on the planet is rather strange, because if it's Tatooine, that means that it's an Outer Rim planet. It's not necessarily under the Empire. At this point, it potentially could be. But on Tatooine, there are Empire bases set up. The Empire does use TIE fighters on planets on occasion, but generally that's used to destroy local villages, to destroy the local populace, to control the local populace, things like this, before they get the ground troops in. Okay, once they get the ground troops in, they have separate ships that can fly on it. Again, this is just like my point with the X-Wings earlier. So the Empire wouldn't really send out TIE fighters onto Tatooine. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, TIE fighters are used not quite for deep space. They're used in space, but they're used on basically shuttles and things like that, like or space stations like the Death Star, where they aren't going out into deep space because they don't quite have the power to go on long distance flights on their own, but they're used in space primarily on, like I said, Death Star or on Imperial shuttles, things like that. You don't see them on planets too often, but it could be that, the Millennium Falcon came out of space onto the planet, was being chased by TIE fighters, and now it has to fight back against the TIE fighters while on the planet, in which case, okay, that's justifiable. But remains to be seen. I don't know. I saw, 20 seconds of it in the trailer. We'll have to wait and see. Finally, is the release date. December 2015. Now, to a lot of people, okay, December 2015, whatever. There's only been one Star Wars movie that was released in December. That was the Star Wars Holiday Special. That was a made-for-TV movie. Every other one has been released in May. May 19th or 25th. All right, all of the Star Wars movies had May releases. Now, to the average person, not a big deal. To me, not a huge deal either. I'm a fanboy, so I'm getting upset about it. I know it's not a huge deal. It's just really weird that they would have a December release date when everything else has been released in May. Why not just release it in May instead? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm sure that they're doing it for marketing, of course, because you have it come out in December. More kids will be apt to buy the toys and the video games and all of that stuff. But when Lucas still owned Lucasfilms, he had it released in May, but he had the toy line come out early. He actually did it really smart. He had the toy line originally release, in October, the year before, and then kids were getting giddy for the toys, and it also created a lot of exposure for the movie itself. And then, kids bought all the toys and everything still. And he did it in a way where there weren't a whole lot of the toys, where most people had to get the toys via layaway for Christmas, which was even smarter because that created an even higher demand for the toys. And Disney could do the same type of a thing. Not necessarily with the layaway, but they could, start releasing toys in December, get people pumped for the movie coming out in May. And then not only do you have higher sales on the toys, but you also have higher sales for the tickets because you have kids who may not be so interested in the new Star Wars, who are only into the TV shows, Rebels and Clone Wars, who are now like, oh, okay, the toys for the new movies are cool. What the hell? I'll go see the new movie with my dad. Why not? And that'll increase sales all over. So doing a December release date to me makes no sense whatsoever. But again, not a big deal. Just to me, it's something because I'm a pretty big Star Wars fanboy, and they're supposed to be released in May, not in December. Watching this, it's probably been broken up into a couple of different parts because at this point it's almost 30 minutes long. Sorry I went on so much, just, had a bit to say about this. If you liked the video, go ahead and click like. If you didn't like it, go ahead and click dislike. I really don't mind. If you want to see more of me talking about things, go ahead, check out my other videos. Pretty much everything else I've talked about has been politics. But when things like this come up, I will be talking about them too. I'm a huge nerd. If you want to be on the up and up, go ahead and subscribe. If you like the video, go ahead and comment. Let me know. If you didn't like it, let me know. If you have any questions, please go ahead and write any questions you have in the comments, and I'll let you know. If you want to see me talking about anything in particular, let me know. Yeah. Thank you very much for watching.